The battlefield was silent after the explosion. Smoke hung in the air, thick and heavy, covering everything in a gray fog. The alien rescue team moved carefully through the wreckage, their eyes glowing faintly under the blue lights of their helmets. They had come to collect the wounded after the battle between humans and the Phyrexian Empire. Most of the humans were gone now. Only the sound of metal groaning and spark from broken ships remained. Then one of the rescuers stopped. His scanner beeped. There was something alive under the ruins. "There's movement here," he said. The others rushed to help. They moved the twisted steel pieces one by one until they saw a human body lying still, covered in dust and blood. His armor was broken, his breathing slow. 17 bones were fractured according to the scanner. It looked impossible for him to survive. When they lifted him onto a stretcher, his eyelids moved. The alien medic leaned closer and whispered, "Can you hear me, human?" Slowly, his lips curved into a weak smile. "Yeah," he said in a soft, cracked voice. "What took you so long?" The aliens looked at each other in shock. His ribs were shattered, both legs broken, and yet he was talking, even smiling. One alien whispered, "He should be dead." But the human just laughed, a rough sound full of pain and strained courage. "You guys worry too much," he said. His laugh echoed inside the silent wreck like something unreal. They had seen many species die in pain, screaming and begging for help. But this human, even with his bones crushed, laughed like it was nothing. They carried him to their medical ship. The medic named Zira kept watching his face as the ship's engine started. His eyes were half open, looking calm, almost peaceful. "Why isn't he screaming?" one of her assistants asked. Zira didn't answer. She had seen humans before, but none like him. His name tag read, Captain Rylan. His pulse was weak but steady. The scanner kept showing warnings, broken bones, internal bleeding, tissue damage, and still he stayed conscious. She leaned closer and said softly, "You are lucky to be alive." He looked at her with tired eyes and smiled again. "Luck's not my thing," he whispered. "I just don't die easy." Zira didn't know what to say. Every other species they had rescued would lose consciousness from such injuries. Yet this man kept talking. His humor, his strange calmness, it made her curious and afraid at the same time. She had heard stories about humans, how they were stubborn, reckless, and fearless. But seeing it up close was different. She ordered the med unit to sedate him, but he refused. "No drugs," he said. "Just fix me up." "You can't stay awake through this," Zira said. "It will hurt." Ryland's lips twitched into a grin. "Pain just means I'm still breathing." The medics looked uneasy, but they began anyway. The machines worked on his shattered bones, the light scanning over his wounds. Each time the laser touched his skin, he flinched, but he didn't scream. He stared at the ceiling, his eyes reflecting the cold blue lights. At one point, his breathing grew shallow, and Zira thought he was fading. She touched his hand gently, feeling how cold it was. "You need to rest," she said softly. He didn't answer for a moment. Then, with a faint chuckle, he whispered, "I promised someone I'd come back. Can't break that now." Zira frowned. "Who did you promise?" But he had already fallen unconscious. His words stayed in her mind as the ship flew away from a battlefield. A human, broken in every possible way, still fighting to keep a promise. She looked at him, lying there in silence, and felt something she couldn't explain. Fear, maybe, or respect. She wasn't sure which one. Hours passed. The ship entered the medbay orbiting above the war zone. Ryland's body was stabilized, but the damage was severe. The machines kept beeping, showing his vital signs, sometimes strong, sometimes weak. Zira stayed by his side, watching. Once, his fingers moved slightly, like he was reaching for something invisible. She thought maybe he was dreaming, but then she heard him whisper something faintly, almost too soft to catch. "Mia, wait for me." The name made her curious. Who was Mia? A sister? A lover? She leaned closer, but he said nothing more. When her shift ended, Zira didn't leave. She sat near his bed, staring at the human's face. Even with scars and bruises, there was something peaceful about him. She couldn't understand how someone could laugh in such pain. The thought kept turning in her mind. What kind of heartbeats inside a human's chest? She remembered how he smiled when they found him, surrounded by death and fire. That smile had something powerful in it, something that felt almost unreal. Late into the night, when everyone else in the med bay was gone, Zira heard the soft sound of a laugh again. She turned quickly. Ryland's eyes were open, glowing faintly under the blue light. "You're still here?" he asked weakly. "Couldn't sleep," she replied. He smiled again, slower this time. "You should. Tomorrow's going to be harder." "Harder?" she asked, confused. He looked past her, into the darkness outside the window, where the stars glimmered faintly. "They think I'm going to die," he said softly. "But I won't. Not yet." Zira stared at him, unable to respond. There was no arrogance in his voice, no madness, just calm certainty. For the first time in her life, she believed the dying man's words. The human lay back down, closing his eyes, and the faint sound of his laugh echoed again in the quiet room. Somewhere deep in her chest, Zira felt something shift, a strange mix of wonder and fear. She didn't know it yet, but this broken human would change everything she believed about strength, pain, and survival. The lights in the med bay dimmed as the ship entered sleep mode. Machines hummed softly, scanning and repairing what they could of the broken human's body. Zira sat in silence beside him, staring at the strange rhythm of his heartbeat on the monitor. It was slow but steady, too steady for someone who had 17 broken bones. She wanted to understand how he could survive this long. The other medics had already decided he was a miracle or a monster, but she felt something different. There was a story inside this man, a story his pain couldn't silence. As Ryland slept, his mind drifted away from the cold blue lights of the alien ship. He saw the sun again, warm, golden, touching his face. The smell of earth filled his senses, fresh rain and old dust. In that dream, he was home again, a small town by the river. His sister, Mia, ran toward him, her laughter echoing across the fields. "You promised you'd never leave," she said, hugging him tight. He smiled, remembering how small she was the day he left for the war. "I'll come back," he had said back then, "no matter what happens." That promise became his anchor, his reason to keep breathing even when everything else broke. Zira watched him carefully as his fingers moved again, gripping the bedsheet tightly. His heartbeat grew faster. The monitor flashed warnings, but she didn't wake him. She knew he was dreaming. She wanted to see what kind of dream could make a man smile through pain. His lips moved slowly. "Mia, I'm still here," he whispered. His voice was faint, full of longing and fire. In his dream, the world changed. He was back on the battlefield again, not the alien one, but the first one he ever fought on Earth. Smoke everywhere. Screams. He remembered the feeling of fear the first time he saw death up close. His friend, Cole, was lying beside him, injured badly. "You'll make it," Ryland said, pressing on his friend's wound. "Don't lie to me," Cole had whispered. Ryland tried to laugh, just like he always did. "It's just a scratch." Cole had smiled weakly. "You laugh at everything, don't you?" "That's what keeps me alive," Ryland had said. But minutes later, Cole stopped breathing. Ryland never forgot that silence, the silence after laughter ends. Zira looked at the human's face. There were tears on his cheeks. It made her heart ache. She had never seen a warrior cry in his sleep before. It wasn't weakness. It was something deeper, something human. She realized that his laughter wasn't to hide pain. It was to fight against it. Each smile was a rebellion against the darkness inside him. The ship vibrated slightly as it crossed into hyperspace. Zira's assistant came into the room and asked, "Doctor, why do you keep watching him? He's just another human soldier." Zira turned her eyes toward the sleeping man and said quietly, "He's not just another soldier. He's teaching me something I didn't know before." "What's that?" the assistant asked. She looked at the monitor, at that stubborn heartbeat still fighting against all logic. "That sometimes," she said softly, "pain is not an enemy. It's proof of life." Hours later, Ryland woke up again. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the blue light. Zira leaned forward, smiling slightly. "You're awake," she said. He blinked, confused at first, then looked around. "Still not dead? Hey," he muttered. She tried not to smile. You sound disappointed." He gave a soft laugh. Not disappointed, just surprised. He looked at his arms and tried to move. Pain shot through him like fire. He clenched his jaw but didn't scream. "You should rest," Zira said quickly. "If you move, the bones will shift again." He nodded, breathing heavily. "Can't help it. My body doesn't listen to rules." She adjusted the healing lights above him. "You humans are strange," she said. "You bleed more than any species I treated, but you survive longer than most." Ryland gave a half smile. "Maybe we just haven't learned how to quit." "Why?" she asked. "What makes you keep going when your body wants to stop?" His eyes met hers, calm but deep. "Because someone's waiting," he said quietly. "That's enough." Zira didn't know what to say. She wanted to ask more, but his eyes were already closing again. She watched him drift back to sleep, her mind full of questions. She wondered what it must feel like to live with that kind of pain and still smile through it. The aliens of her world didn't believe in emotional strength. They believed in logic, control, and perfection. But this human had none of those things. He was messy, broken, emotional, yet stronger than anyone she had ever known. As the ship continued through the dark void, a message came through the communication panel. The command center warned of incoming raider signals nearby. Zira froze. They couldn't handle another fight, not with so many wounded aboard. She looked at Ryland, still asleep, unaware of the danger coming. The irony struck her. The human who refused to die was now on a ship that might be destroyed any moment. The alarms began to ring, echoing through the holes. Red lights flashed over the blue glow. Zira's assistant shouted, "They found us. We need to prepare for impact." Zira stood up quickly, securing Ryland's bed to keep him stable. The ship shook violently as plasma fire hit the shields. "We can't fight," she shouted. "We need to run." But the pilot's voice came through the intercom, desperate. "They've disabled our engines. We're trapped." Zira looked at the sleeping human one last time. His chest rose and fell, slow and peaceful, as if he didn't care about the chaos outside. For a strange reason, his calmness gave her courage. She took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. But as the ship rocked again, Ryland's eyes suddenly opened. He looked around, alert, as if his instincts had woken him before danger even touched him. "What's happening?" he asked, voice rough but strong. "We're under attack," Zira said. His lips curved into that same reckless smile. "Then it's a good day to stay alive." Zira stared at him in disbelief. Even now, half broken, barely healed, he was ready to fight. The alarms blared louder, shaking the walls. Ryland tried to sit up, his face twisting in pain, but he refused to stop. "You can't move." Zira shouted, reaching to hold him down. "Watch me," he said, his voice low but full of willpower. His laughter came again, quiet, brave, and full of defiance. For a moment, the chaos outside didn't matter. The only sound that filled the medbay was the laugh of a man who refused to die. The ship kept shaking violently as the sound of explosions echoed through the hallways. The blue lights flickered, turning red with every impact. Zira held onto the wall to keep her balance, her heart racing. The alien crew shouted orders, running in every direction. The raiders outside showed no mercy. Plasma blasts tore through the outer hull. One wrong hit, and the medbay would be gone. Ryland was sitting up now, sweat running down his face, his breathing uneven. Every movement sent pain like fire through his broken ribs, but his eyes stayed sharp. He looked at Zira and said, "You need to get everyone to safety." She stared at him, shocked. "You can't even stand properly. You'll die if you move." He smiled faintly. "You said that before." His voice was weak but filled with quiet strength. "You aliens really don't learn fast." Zira tried to push him back onto the bed, but he grabbed her wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Listen," he said, his tone calm but firm. "You can save me later. Right now, your ship needs help." Before she could answer, another explosion hit nearby. The floor tilted. Alarms screamed louder. A medic fell beside them, blood on his forehead. Ryland looked around the medbay, medical tools scattered, lights dimming, smoke creeping in from the broken wall vents. He turned his eyes back to Zira. "Where's your security deck?" She hesitated. 2 corridors down. "But—" "Good," he said, cutting her off. "Help me walk." She looked at him, disbelief in her eyes. "You'll die if you take another step." He smirked. "Then let's make those steps count." Zira didn't know why, but she obeyed. She slipped her arm under his shoulder, supporting him as he stood up. He gritted his teeth, his whole body shaking with pain. The machines behind him beat frantically as his vital signs dropped. He ignored them. One slow step after another, he moved toward the door. Zira's assistant tried to stop them. "Doctor, he can't go out there." But Zira just shook her head. He already decided. They moved through the narrow hallway, the air thick with smoke. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. Alien soldiers rushed past them, staring in shock as they saw the broken human limping through the chaos. None of them had ever seen something like it, a creature that should be dead, walking with fire in his eyes. They reached the security deck. The captain of the ship turned toward them, his voice full of anger. "Doctor, what are you doing bringing him here?" Zira opened her mouth to answer, but Ryland spoke first. "Where do you need me?" The captain stared at him like he was insane. "You can barely stand." Ryland smiled weakly. "Standing's enough." Before the captain could argue, another explosion hit, shaking the room. One of the gunners shouted, "The raiders are boarding us." Zira's eyes widened. The enemy was coming inside. The captain cursed and grabbed his blaster. Ryland took a deep breath and asked, "You got any weapons to spare?" The captain glared at him, then threw a sidearm his way. "Fine, but don't expect me to drag your body back." Ryland caught the weapon with one hand. His arm trembled, but his grip was steady. Wouldn't be the first time someone said that. When the doors burst open, the corridor filled with chaos. The raiders, tall, armored, and brutal, stormed in, firing energy blasts. The crew fought back, but they were outnumbered. Ryland took cover behind a console, gritting his teeth as pain shot through every bone. He aimed, fired, and one of the raiders dropped instantly. Zira watched him, stunned. His hands were bleeding, but his aim was precise. Every shot he took was clean, controlled, not a single wasted move. At one point, a blast hit near him, throwing him to the floor. Zira ran to his side. "You need to stop," she cried. But he pushed himself up, coughing, smiling through the blood on his lips. "I told you," he said. "Pain means I'm still breathing." Then he picked up his weapon again. The battle raged on. The ship trembled under the pressure. Ryland moved like a ghost through the fire and smoke. Even when a piece of metal struck his shoulder, he didn't slow down. The other soldiers began to notice him, the human who refused to fall. His laughter echoed between the sounds of gunfire. It wasn't madness, it was courage made of pain. Finally, the last of the raiders fell. The alarm stopped. The ship grew quiet again, except for the distant hum of the engines. Smoke drifted in the air, glowing faintly under the emergency lights. Zira ran toward Ryland. He was on one knee, his face pale, breathing hard. She knelt beside him, putting a hand on his chest. "You're bleeding again," she said. He gave a weak laugh. "That's what happens when you fight with broken bones." Zira's eyes filled with tears. She didn't understand how he could still joke. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why do you do this to yourself?" He looked at her with tired eyes. "Because if I stop, people die." His words hit her like a wave. There was no pride in them, no arrogance, just truth. He didn't fight for glory. He fought because someone had to. And even when his body was falling apart, his spirit refused to quit. The captain walked over, staring at Ryland with new respect. "You saved half my crew," he said quietly. Ryland just nodded. "That's good enough." Then, before anyone could say another word, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. Zira shouted his name, catching him before he hit the floor. The medics rushed forward, but his pulse was faint. She pressed her hand against his chest, whispering, "Don't you dare die now." They carried him back to the med bay, the same place where it all began. Zira worked nonstop, refusing to leave his side. Every few minutes, She checked his heartbeat, praying it wouldn't stop. And even when he was unconscious, a faint smile stayed on his lips, that same strange, unbreakable smile. When her assistant asked why she was still fighting for him, she answered quietly, because he fought for us first. She looked down at him, her eyes full of emotion, and I think he's not done fighting yet. Outside the window, the stars stretched endlessly into the black sky. The ship floated in silence, carrying a man who had broken every limit she ever knew. Zira leaned closer and whispered softly, "You laughed through the pain once. Maybe that laugh will save you again." And as if he heard her, a faint sound came from his lips, a quiet, breathless chuckle, almost like a promise that he wasn't going anywhere. The storm outside the facility grew stronger, lightning flashing across the shattered skies as alarms blared through the hallways. Inside the underground base, chaos reigned. Soldiers rushed from corridor to corridor, yelling commands, but no one knew who was really in control anymore. Zara moved silently through the shadows, her heart pounding in her chest. The pain in her arm reminded her that she was still bleeding, but she didn't care. She had to find Kian before the soldiers did. Kian sat in a dimly lit lab room, staring at the flickering lights on the monitor in front of him. His mind was a storm of thoughts, about Zara, about the experiments, about what they had turned him into. His hands were still trembling from the fight. He could hear voices approaching from the hallway, and he knew his time was running out. "If they find me here," he muttered under his breath, "it's over." The door slid open, and Zara stumbled inside. Her eyes locked on his, and for a brief moment, everything else faded away. The alarms, the shouting, even the fear. "You're alive," she breathed out, stepping closer. Kian gave a faint smile. "I told you I'm hard to kill." But before they could speak further, heavy boots echoed from the corridor behind her. Zara quickly locked the door. "They're coming," she said. "We need to move now." Kian stood up, pulling a small chip from the console. "This holds everything. Their research, the truth about what they did to us." He handed it to Zara. "If I don't make it out, you make sure this gets to the outside world." Zara's eyes widened. "Don't say that. You're coming with me." Suddenly, an explosion shook the entire hallway. The lights flickered out, leaving them in almost complete darkness. Through the broken door, silhouettes appeared, soldiers with glowing visors and raised weapons. Kian grabbed Zara's hand and pulled her toward the back exit. "This way," he shouted. They ran through the narrow passage, smoke filling the air and gunfire echoing behind them. As they reached the lower level, the air grew colder. It was a maintenance area, a maze of steel pipes and flickering lights. "They are cutting off all exits," Zara said, catching her breath. Kian looked around, scanning for another route. "There's one way out," he said finally, "but it's risky." Zara gave a small, defiant smile. "Everything's risky when you're with me." They reached a large circular chamber with a massive ventilation shaft leading to the surface. The metal walls were covered in frost. "You first," Kian said. Zara hesitated. "You can't climb with your injuries." He shook his head. "I'll find another way. Go." Zara reluctantly started climbing, her hands slipping on the icy metal. She could hear the soldiers getting closer. Kian turned to face the corridor, his eyes glowing faintly blue as the last fragments of the experiment inside him reacted. His strength surged again, but it came with pain. His veins burned like fire. Still, he stood his ground. When the soldiers appeared, Kian didn't run. He moved like a storm. Bullets tore through the air, but his body absorbed the impact. He grabbed one soldier and slammed him against the wall, disarming another with inhuman speed. For every wound he took, he kept standing until the last one fell silent on the floor. But Kian could feel his strength fading. High above, Zara finally reached the surface. She turned to look down the shaft and shouted, "Kian, come on." But there was no answer, only silence and smoke below. Her heart sank. She wanted to climb back, but the structure was collapsing. With tears in her eyes, she pulled herself out into the freezing night. The facility below erupted in a massive explosion, sending a plume of fire and dust into the sky. Zara fell to the ground, covering her head. When the sound finally faded, she sat there in the quiet, staring at the burning horizon. For a moment, she thought she saw a shadow moving through the smoke, tall, steady, and alive. But when she blinked, it was gone. Zara clutched the data chip in her hand. "I'll finish what you started," she whispered. The wind howled across the barren wasteland, carrying the smell of metal and ash. Somewhere deep underground, among the ruins and fire, something stirred, a faint heartbeat that refused to stop. Kian was still alive. The silence after the battle felt heavier than the explosions that came before. The ship floated in the quiet darkness of space, its hull scarred and smoke still rising from the impact zones. Most of the crew were too tired to speak. They had survived, but just barely. Inside the medbay, the lights glowed softly over Ryland's body. His breathing was shallow, his skin pale, his chest bandaged tightly. Dr. Zira stood beside him, her eyes tired and red from sleepless hours. She had done everything she could, but the human's condition was getting worse. His heart was strong, but his body was failing. Her assistant whispered, "He's not going to make it." Zira didn't reply. She stared at the monitor showing his pulse, watching each weak beat. "You don't know him," she said finally, her voice low but firm. "He's not like us." The assistant frowned. "He's just flesh and bone. He'll die like everyone else." Zira looked at Ryland's face and shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "He's different. Pain doesn't break him. It reminds him why he's alive." The door opened suddenly. The captain of the ship entered, his expression dark. "Doctor," he said quickly, "we have a bigger problem. The reactor core is unstable. The last attack damaged the main coolant lines." Zira turned to him in shock. "If the reactor goes critical, it'll destroy the entire ship," the captain finished grimly. "We have less than 30 minutes before meltdown." Zira's mind raced. "Send the repair drones." "They are destroyed," the captain said. "We'll need someone to go inside manually." Her heart froze. The reactor chamber was a death trap, radiation, heat, and collapsing metal. No one who entered could survive long enough to fix it. She looked back at Ryland, lying still on the bed, barely alive. The irony struck her like a knife. The man who refused to die was now surrounded by death again. The captain clenched his fists. "I'll find a volunteer." But before Zira could answer, a weak voice came from behind her. "Don't bother." She turned sharply. Ryland's eyes were open, glowing faintly under the blue light. His lips curved into a tired smile. "I'll do it." Zira's voice broke. "No, you can't even stand." Ryland chuckled softly. "Standing's overrated." He tried to move but winced in pain. "Just point me to the problem." The captain shook his head. "Absolutely not. You're barely alive." Ryland met his gaze, his tone calm but unyielding. "You need someone who's already dying. Seems like I'm qualified." Zira felt tears fill her eyes. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Ryland looked at her, his smile fading into something softer. "Because that's what we do," he said quietly. "We fix things, even when we're broken." The captain hesitated for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "If you really want to do this," he said, "you'll need a suit." Ryland smirked. "A suit won't save me, but it'll make the walk easier." Zira helped him sit up, tears falling silently down her face. She wanted to scream, to stop him, but she saw it in his eyes, the same fire she saw when he fought the raiders, the same stubborn strength that refused to die. She helped him into a protective suit, sealing the locks with shaking hands. "You don't have to do this," she said one last time. He looked at her, his voice soft but steady. "You said humans are strange. Maybe we are. We laugh when it hurts, we fight when it's hopeless, and we keep our promises, no matter the cost." He touched her shoulder gently, then limped toward the reactor bay. Each step echoed through the quiet halls like a heartbeat. The crew watched him pass, the broken human who had already given everything, walking toward certain death without fear. Some saluted. Others simply watched in silence, knowing they were witnessing something unforgettable. The reactor chamber was a glowing inferno of light and sound. The air shimmered with heat, and warning sirens filled the room. Ryland stepped inside, squinting against the glare. The temperature reading spiked instantly, but he didn't stop. The metal floor burned beneath his boots, but he kept moving. His body screamed in pain. His vision blurred, yet his mind stayed focused. Zira's voice came through the comms. You have to reach the coolant valve on the far side. You'll need to manually restart it. Got it, he said, breathing hard. Piece of cake. Rylan, your suit is overheating. Yeah, he said, chuckling weakly. So am I. He reached the valve. The handle was jammed, fused by heat. He tried to turn it, but his strength was fading. Come on, he muttered, forcing his hands to move. Just one more time. Pain shot through his broken ribs. His vision darkened. For a moment, he saw Mia's face, smiling, waiting by the riverbank on Oath. Her voice whispered in his head, Don't stop, Awai. You promised. He gritted his teeth and pushed harder. The valve turned with a loud metallic crack. The reactor's roar softened as the coolant lines reactivated. Zira's voice came through, trembling with relief. You did it. The core is stabilizing. Rylan smiled faintly. Told you, I don't die easy. Then the heat surge hit. A burst of energy ripped through the chamber, throwing him against the wall. The suit alarms blared. Rylan. Zira screamed. You have to get out. But there was no answer. The monitors showed the radiation level spiking. Zira ran from the control room toward the chamber, ignoring the captain's shouts to stop. She reached the door, pounding on it desperately. Rylan, please, answer me. But inside, all she could see through the glass was a still figure lying against the wall, his hand resting on the coolant lever. The ship slowly stopped shaking. The alarms faded. The core was stable. But Zira's heart broke as she stared at the motionless figure inside the glowing chamber. Tears streamed down her face. You kept your promise, she whispered, even if it killed you. Then, just as she turned to walk away, the radio crackled faintly. A weak voice came through, full of pain but still carrying that same unshakable humor. Hey, Doc, told you I'd make it hard to kill me. Zira froze, her tears turning into laughter. Against all logic, against every rule of science she knew, the human was still alive. Smoke filled the corridor as emergency lights flickered, painting the walls in red and orange. The ship was still trembling from the reactor shock, but it was alive, because of him. Dr. Zira ran down the metal hallway, her chest burning with every breath. She didn't care about the alarms or the shouting crew. All she cared about was a man who had once again done the impossible. When she reached the reactor doors, heat waves rolled out so strong that her visor fogged instantly. The metal was twisted, half melted from the energy blast. 2 engineers tried to stop her. Doctor, you can't go in there. The radiation levels are too high, one shouted. But she pushed them aside. He's still alive, she said firmly. I heard him. She hit the manual override and forced the door open with all her strength. The room glowed with a blinding white light. Sparks rained down from the ceiling, and in the middle of it all, through the haze of smoke, she saw him, Captain Rylan, lying against the wall, barely moving. His suit was torn, the armor blackened and melted, his helmet cracked, but he was breathing. Zira rushed to his side, falling to her knees beside him. Rylan, can you hear me? She shouted, gripping his shoulder. He turned his head slightly, his lips curling into a faint, tired smile. Oh, late, he whispered. Zira almost laughed through her tears. You idiot, she said softly. You did it. You saved everyone. He blinked slowly, the corners of his mouth twitching upward. Told you, I'm too stubborn to die. With the help of 2 crew members, she lifted him onto a stretcher. As they carried him through the corridor, people stopped and watched. Soldiers, engineers, medics, all of them stared in silence at the human who had faced death twice and come back laughing. Some whispered prayers. Others saluted. Even the captain, usually cold and unreadable, bowed his head as Rylan passed. In the med bay, Zira worked quickly, attaching scanners and injectors. His vitals were weak but steady. His body, however, was beyond damaged. Burns, fractures, torn muscles, any other being would be dead within seconds. Yet somehow his heart was still beating strong. He shouldn't be alive, whispered her assistant in disbelief. No organism could survive this. Zira looked at the scanner, then back at Rylan. "His not surviving," she said quietly. "His fighting." Hours passed. The ship calmed. The crisis was over. But Zira didn't leave his side. She watched the slow rise and fall of his chest, the flickering heartbeat on the screen. Around midnight ship time, she noticed something strange. His wounds were closing. Not instantly, not like a miracle, but slowly, steadily, as if his body refused to give up. She adjusted the scanner, confused. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "There's no regeneration compound in his system." Rylan groaned softly, his eyes opening halfway. "Maybe humans just heal differently," he muttered, his voice barely audible. Zira's heart jumped. "You're awake." "Wasn't planning on missing the after-party," he said, forcing a grin. She shook her head, trying not to smile. "You should be unconscious." He coughed weakly. "I'll rest when I'm dead. Not before." For a long moment, there was silence between them, just the hum of the medbay and the steady rhythm of the monitor. Then Rylan looked at her with a tired but warm expression. "You were crying," he said softly. Zira looked away. "You almost died." He chuckled faintly. "Almost doesn't count." Then his face grew serious. "You said once that humans are strange," he murmured. "Maybe you're right. We don't know when to quit. But maybe that's our secret. We don't stop fighting, even when everything says we should." Zira met his gaze, and for the first time since the war began, she smiled, a real, honest smile. "And maybe," she said quietly, "that's why the universe needs humans." Just then, the door opened and the ship's captain entered. "Rylan," he said, standing tall, "you saved all of us. The crew want to see you when you're ready." Rylan looked down at his bandaged hands and gave a faint laugh. "Tell them the hero's still recharging." As the captain left, Zira leaned closer and whispered, "You know, you can rest now. The danger's over." Rylan closed his eyes, his voice soft but sure. "For now. But danger never really ends. Document. It just waits for round 2. Zira brushed a strand of hair from his forehead and said gently, "Then next time, try not to nearly die." He smiled again, even in exhaustion. No promises. Outside the medbay window, the stars stretched endlessly across the dark void. The ship sailed quietly through space, carrying a new legend, the story of the human who laughed through pain, defied death, and saved them all. And somewhere deep inside that quiet, star-filled night, Rylan's heartbeat continued, strong, defiant, and unbroken. The next morning, the ship floated in calm silence through the endless dark of space. Most of the crew had returned to their stations, and repairs were finally underway. The danger had passed, but for Dr. Zira, the real mystery had just begun. She stood alone in the medical lab, watching Rylan's medical readings. His recovery was impossible. Every injury, shattered bones, burned tissue, torn muscles, had already healed far faster than any biological system should allow. His heart rate was steady, his temperature normal, and yet his cells were still active as if fighting something unseen. Zira frowned at the monitor, her tail flicking nervously. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. She opened the blood analysis file again, running a scan. The computer beeped softly, showing strange readings, traces of energy unlike anything she had ever seen in a living body. This energy, it's not radiation. It's like it's alive. Behind her, a voice spoke quietly. "You found it too, didn't you?" Zira turned sharply. It was a captain, standing in the doorway, his expression heavy. He stepped closer and glanced at Rylan's sleeping form. "You're not the first one to notice. The humans from the early wars, they had the same thing." Zira looked at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" The captain sighed. "Before our alliance with Earth, during the border conflicts, we captured a few human soldiers. Tough ones. They survived wounds that would kill anyone else. We never understood how. But the scans showed the same energy you're seeing now." Zira's eyes widened. "So you're saying this isn't just Rylan?" The captain nodded slowly. "No, it's in all of them, dormant, waiting. Something ancient, buried deep in their DNA. When they are pushed to the edge, it wakes up." She looked back at Rylan, who who was breathing peacefully, unaware of their words. An instinct to survive? Something more, the captain said. A weapon nature built long before any of us existed. At that moment, the lights flickered. The ship's AI spoke through the intercom. Incoming signal detected. Encrypted. Origin unknown. Zira and the captain exchanged worried glances. Can you trace it? She asked. Negative. Signal strength rising. It appears to be targeting the human's biosignature. Zira's eyes widened. Rylan. She rushed to his bedside. The monitors began to spike. His heart rate jumped. Brain activity surged. Is reacting to the signal, she shouted. The captain tapped his comlink. Shut down the transmission. But it was too late. Ryland's body jerked violently, his hands gripping the sides of the bed. The room filled with a low hum, a deep vibration that rattled every metal surface. His eyes snapped open, glowing faintly blue, brighter than before. The air around him seemed to bend, as if charged with invisible energy. Zira took a step back, shielding her eyes. Rylan, can you hear me? His breathing was fast, his muscles tensed. I can hear it, he said in a low voice. Something calling. The captain raised his weapon cautiously. Stand down, soldier. But Rylan didn't move. He looked lost, confused, as if seeing something no one else could. They are not gone, he whispered. The ones who made me. They're awake. The captain froze. What did you say? Rylan turned his head slowly toward them. This wasn't just science, he said. They didn't make soldiers. They made survivors, and now they're trying to finish what they started. Zira grabbed his arm. Rylan, who's calling you? He looked at her, his eyes full of pain and something else. Faye, the architects, he whispered. The ones who built us to outlive everything. Before Zira could reply, the ship shuddered violently. The lights dimmed, and a deep rumble filled the air. The Ai's voice crackled again. Unknown vessel detected. Massive energy signature approaching. The captain turned toward the window. Through the thick glass, a shape appeared in the distance. Enormous, ancient, glowing with blue symbols that matched the energy running through Ryland's veins. The ship was unlike anything they had ever seen, neither alien nor human, but something older. Zira felt a chill run through her spine. They found him. Ryland stood, removing the medical wires from his arms. His body still hurt, but his voice was calm. They are not here to kill me, he said quietly. They are here to take me back. Zira grabbed his hand, refusing to let go. You're not going anywhere. Not after what you did for us. He looked at her with a faint, sad smile. You don't understand. Document. I wasn't just meant to survive. I was meant to obey. The captain raised his weapon. Over my dead body. Ryland's eyes glowed brighter. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The ship outside began to open, releasing a beam of light that reached toward them like a hand. The walls trembled, and a voice echoed faintly through the air, ancient, emotionless, powerful. Unit 07, return to origin. Zira stepped in front of Ryland, her voice shaking. His not your unit. His human. The light grew stronger. Humanity was our design, the voice replied, and our creation has been found. Ryland's face hardened. He looked at Zira one last time. If I don't stop them, they'll take every human left. Zira's eyes filled with tears. You can't fight that alone. He smiled faintly. I never fight alone. Not anymore. Then he turned toward the light, his body glowing brighter, his heartbeat syncing with the ship's hum. The air shook as his energy rose, the same unstoppable force that had saved him before now burning like a star. The alien ship fired a beam, but this time Ryland didn't flinch. He raised his hand, and the light split apart like shattered glass. For a brief second, everyone saw it, the real power inside the human body, raw and ancient, something even gods might fear. Zira whispered under her breath, "He's not just human anymore." And as the two forces collided in a storm of light and sound, the screen went white, ending the story of the man who was never meant to live, but refused to die. The blinding light swallowed everything, the ship, the stars, the crew. For a moment, time itself seemed to stop. Then came the sound, a deep, echoing hum that vibrated through every surface, every heartbeat. Zira shielded her eyes, but through the glow, she could still see him, Rylan, standing at the center of it all. His body was outlined in brilliant blue energy, his veins glowing like molten light. He looked neither human nor alien now, but something far beyond both. Outside the ship, the colossal vessel of the architects loomed like a god of metal and light. Its massive shape pulsed with symbols older than any known civilization. The voice that came from it was calm, emotionless, and endless. Unit 07, you have exceeded your directive. Return for reconfiguration. Rylan didn't move. His face was calm, but inside, a war was raging. The voice inside his head was cold, mechanical, the echo of the thing that made him. You were built to endure. You were built to obey. But then another voice rose in his mind, softer, human, warm. You're more than what they made you, Rylan. Zira's words echoed faintly. You laugh, you fight, you care. That's what makes you human. He opened his eyes slowly, the glow in them fading just enough to reveal the man underneath. No, he said quietly. I wasn't built to obey. I was built to survive. And I choose who I survive for. The architect's ship pulsed violently, the voice deepening. Resistance is futile. Humanity belongs to us. Rylan clenched his fists. Not anymore. He turned to look back at 01 last time. She was standing at the observation window, her face pale, tears streaking down her cheeks. Their eyes met through the glass. She mouthed two words, "Come back." He gave a small nod, a promise he wasn't sure he could keep, then faced a beam of light that linked the two ships. He took a single step forward, and the entire battlefield trembled. His body burned with pain, but he didn't stop. You wanted your weapon, he said, his voice echoing through the void. You built it too well. With a roar, Rylan leapt into the beam, his energy exploding outward. The light around him shifted from blue to white as the architects tried to seize control, but his will was stronger. Inside the beam, visions flashed through his mind. Earth burning, the experiments, the screams, Zira's voice calling his name. He shouted through the pain, "You made us to endure pain. You forgot, pain makes us stronger." The beam shattered. A burst of energy rippled through space, tearing through the architect's ship like a storm. Systems failed. Circuits melted. The massive vessel cracked apart, sending fragments spiraling into the stars. Inside the smaller ship, Zira was thrown to the ground. "Rylan!" she screamed, rushing to the console. Every screen flashed white static. "Where is he?" The captain shouted. "The human signal, it's merging with the architect's core." Zira's heart froze. His fusing with it. The captain's face was grim. His not just fighting them, his rewriting them. Outside, where the massive ship once was, a new light began to form. It was quieter, softer, and it pulsed like a heartbeat. Zira stared at it through the viewport, whispering, "Rylan." Then the voice of the ship's AI broke through the silence. All hostile signals have vanished. Energy levels stabilizing. Human biosignature detected. Weak, but alive. Zira gasped. "Alive!" She rushed toward the escape bay, ignoring the captain's orders. She took a shuttle and flew toward the drifting light. What she found made her breath catch. Floating among the wreckage was a single figure. His armor was gone, his body glowing faintly, like embers fading after a storm. She brought him aboard, her hands trembling as she pulled off his cracked helmet. His face was pale, peaceful. For a terrifying moment, he didn't breathe. Then, slowly, his chest rose. His eyes opened, tired, but alive. He smiled weakly. "Hey, Doc," he whispered. "Told you I don't die easy." Zira let out a shaky laugh, tears spilling down her face. "You destroyed them, didn't you?" He shook his head faintly. "Not destroyed. Changed. Their code, it's gone now. But something else stayed. Something human." She touched his hand gently. "You did it, Rylan. You saved us all." He looked out at the stars, his voice soft. "No, we saved each other." As the shuttle drifted back toward their ship, Zero leaned her head on his shoulder, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. The same heart that had refused to stop, the sound that had defied gods, machines, and death itself. Outside, the remains of the architect's ship glowed faintly before fading into the darkness. And for the first time in centuries, the stars were quiet again. Zero looked at him, smiling through her tears. "So what now, Captain?" Ryland took a deep breath, his eyes full of light. "Now!" He smiled faintly. "We go home." The camera would fade out slowly, showing their small ship sailing through the endless sky, two silhouettes against the stars. Proof that no matter how much the universe tried to break them, humanity always found a way to stand back up. Because that's what they did. They survived, and they laughed through the pain.